Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual astrology club. This is Claire Moon, and we're going to be talking about the astrology for November 2023. Thanks for joining me, everyone. If you look to the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see a little chat box. You can always put your questions or comments in there. If you're coming to this not live, but later, welcome. Thanks for joining me again. And you can put comments below in the comment section. I try to keep up with those. Of course, I do put the timestamps. Give me a good 48 hours afterwards to get those up. Hello, Sensi. Welcome back. Good to see you. We're going to talk about, and actually, now I'm seeing typos everywhere. It says hashtag October. It's hashtag November. Before we get into the month ahead, I do want to talk about the eclipses that we're currently in. We just finished it basically yesterday, but we're still in the cycle. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about void of course moons because we just had a couple of those, which were really, really vivid for me at least. And then we'll get into more of what the November is. So feel free to, again, like this is going to be 2 hours long. So go, get a snack while we're getting set up here. Get a nice stretch in, get yourself settled in. It's going to be a big one today, I think, per usual. Happy Sunday. All right. Where are my notey notes? Let me think. Do I have any other announcements before I jump in? I usually like to give my little list of dates. Oh, whoever is in the live chat, does it sound like I'm on a mic? Because last month, I think I had the wrong settings chosen, or I used a different cord or something. But I just want to make sure my sound is on point because that was like so disappointing. Because this is it's a very square room. For those of you who know, you know. All right. I don't think I have any announcements. Everything is the same. I'm still I'm still booking. Books are open. Always doing readings for people. I do 2 a day usually if I can. So there's plenty of room. I am only booked out about 3 weeks right now, so that's not too bad. So get on my website www.aligninglightastrology.com, and I have discounts. So because I'm very thankful and grateful for this, but because I am part of Chris Brennan's referral list of astrologers, because Chris does not do readings at this point in his career, but he has a list of astrologers, and there's more than me too, because of course I don't do everything. So we've got there's astrologers that can do rectification, like Patrick Watson, Catherine Urban. P.S. I get a lot of emails about rectification, and I was doing chart rectification for a moment. I have stepped back from that. If you need your chart rectified, if you know what that means, you'll know what that means. Patrick Watson and Catherine Urban, those are your rectification people. But they're on the list anyway. 10% off discount. Boo, boo, boo. Air horns, air horns. You can use the code Astrology Podcast, and that'll get you a 10% off on any of my services, except for my research, which brings me to, I guess, other announcement. Still doing it, about to wrap it up, I think, as far as like collecting samples. I'm pretty much at 50. So thank you for everyone who has participated in my research. That is just basically looking at this particular technique called the moon under bond. And it's for anyone who has a full moon in their birth chart or a new moon. And when I say new moon, for the nerds out there, yes, I do mean balsamic as well. So waning into the next phase or waxing out of it. New moon, full moon babies, come to me. I'm doing research. Anyway, that's all on the website. It's all on the website. I think that's it. Let me get our little clock up and we'll get rolling. Let's see. Okay, here we are currently, at least from Madison, Wisconsin. Here I am. Let me check in with the chat and see. I saw at least one familiar face. Oh, we have several familiar faces. Hello, Reverend Kai is here. Victoria is here. Happy Sunday. I do have a little bit of yellow. So I wanted to wear a little bit of yellow because it's Sunday. So we do have a little bit. I used my Regulus oils because 12th house sun. So you got to do that. Sphere and Sundry. Slather yourselves. I'm not a sponsored thing or anything. I just like them. And I'm constantly slathering myself with their products. Oh, and like and subscribe if you have the ability or the desire. Please do so. Let's talk about the month of November 2023. I mean, it doesn't have two eclipses and it doesn't have two Hellenistic grade void of course moons. So I'm going to say that I like November. This is premature. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm going to prefer it to whatever we just had. I think just going to throw it out there. But here are the dates. Here are the important dates. I also noticed there's just a lot of really interesting oppositions this month of planets. So we're going to be talking about a lot of different oppositions, but we've got Saturn stationing direct on the 4th of November. Saturn has been retrograde for 4 months, so that's kind of a big deal. On the 8th of November, we've got Venus entering into Libra, Mercury entering Sagittarius on the 10th, Scorpio New Moon on the 13th, Mars Cazimi, so Mars conjoining the Sun on the 17th, Sun entering Sagittarius and meeting Mercury there on the 22nd, Mars entering the party. Mars enters Sagittarius chat on the 24th, Mercury entering their pre-retrograde phase on the 25th, and Gemini full moon on the 27th. So those are kind of the big notes. And then also another couple things, there is a Mars Uranus opposition this month. So that's more toward the end of the month. What else? There was something else. Yeah, the Mars Uranus opposition. And then there's also going to be at the end of the month a Mars Saturn square that comes up. So those are like, we'll talk about it. But those are a couple of big signatures we want to kind of figure out how to navigate around, because it's not like a fun party type of transit. It's like we got to navigate around this transit. So that's more at the end of the month. So stay tuned for that. Let me look at here some overall thoughts. So I had mentioned just some of those signatures that are coming up that are interesting. Mercury is going to be opposite Uranus as well. That was another thing we need to talk about. Okay, so big overarching thoughts right now. I thought it was pretty interesting. Today is October 29th, and we've got a lot of planets in nocturnal signs. So water and earth. Most of the planets, Venus too. Most of the planets, Moon is moving around a lot faster, but a lot of planets in nocturnal signs. So what does that mean? Nocturnal signs are more responsive to what is going on around them. So earth sign, planets in earth, planets in water, their tendency is going to be at a slower pace. They're going to be just like interacting with the world around them a little bit more slowly, a little bit more responsively, versus air and fire more, trying to influence the world around them, acting upon the world around them in a more externalizing kind of way. So you can see the difference there, right? So when we've got so many planets in what is more slow, responsive, that's the vibe for the month for the most part. But as the month continues, we do get a lot of shifts. We get planets into Sagittarius. So we're going to get a lot more fire by the end of the month than we have now. We'll have air, Venus going into Libra. So there are going to be some shifts into more, I think, action, more external kind of changing and quote unquote manifesting, maybe more at the end of November. And with some of the transits that are kind of destabilizing in their own way in certain areas of our chart, I think like if right now you're waiting for something to happen, if you're waiting for something to move along, we need to be patient till the end of the month. It doesn't mean we shouldn't do anything. It doesn't mean we shouldn't act on things and put in effort and try, but things might not kind of start moving, I guess, and progressing in a way until the end of the month. That's kind of my wide lens, squint my eyes point of view on the month. But we just had a lot of excitement. So I'm kind of down with just kind of grounding into earth and water. That feels okay to me right now. So in any event, I think that was it. Yeah. And then by the end of right now, okay, what is our fixed, mutable, cardinal kind of mashup here? Because right now we've got, I think, a pretty decent amount. We're going to have way more mutable planets by the end of the month. I think right now we have a decent amount of balance. Let me see here. I didn't really tally it up. Yeah, we've got mutable, we got fixed, we got cardinal, we got all of them. Not a ton of cardinal, but at least Pluto. It's going to be less fixed and more mutable as the month goes on. So that's another thing that kind of speaks to breaking up of things or changing or moving of things that right now might be more stable or solid or not moving, if that makes sense. Okay. Let's get into the deets. Let's do the deets. Let's go into the first of the month. Oh, what was the rising? I think it was Sag rising when we started today. So I'll try to. We've got a retrograde ruler of this session, so we will try to stay on track. November 1st. November 1st. So I guess let's back up. Actually, no, I am gonna start now. I'm gonna add in now because right now we've got this really nice Taurus moon. And then at the end of this month, and I can't remember if I specifically mentioned this at the end of October's forecast, but then we're going to get our monthly Gemini moon. And we get, of course, every month we get the moon in any of these mutable signs. But anytime the moon is in a mutable sign like Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, they get into a square with Saturn. And I mean, I have personal planets in mutable, so I have a feeling that I've been feeling this maybe more than some other charts. But if you have mutable planets, mutable sun, mutable moon in any of those signs, like you might, like anytime the moon moves through these, it kind of pings on those in your natal chart and highlights that. And when Saturn is highlighted, what gets brought up is like, slowness, discipline, being methodical about things. It's a lot of duty, burden, obligation, but it's not like fun. It's not like light and carefree. It's much heavier and it feels heavy. And I have been noticing when the moon is in Gemini, especially when we have Saturn in this kind of overcoming position earlier in the zodiac, that's a strong kind of square coming in from Saturn. And Gemini moon can feel a little funky right now. So hang in there. It won't be like this forever. But I think the last couple days of the month might be like a little bit of this, maybe more on the 30th, like tomorrow on Monday. But then we're going to get, as we get into November 1st, November 2nd, then we'll get out of that and we'll have a nice Cancer moon that's in a little better position. It'll be seen by both benefics. And at this point, it'll be getting a trine from both malefics. So that's like this sky starting on November 2nd. November 2nd feels to me a little bit better than the last several days. So again, if this week kind of starts off funky, first end of October into first parts of November here, just wait till the end of the week. I think things will flesh out just okay. A little better than okay. Okay, there. I've been doing this every single month. I basically like shit on Gemini moon transiting. So sorry. I don't mean that about the natal placement. Y'all are beautiful, but yeah, because of the current sky, that's a bit of rough patch. Mercury has cleared Mars by the 1st of November. So that's another thing that we are just getting out of just today, actually. Mercury and Mars have been together, giving us this really sharp, kind of incisive, precise way of thinking, way of speaking, really getting to the point of things, trying to kind of sort through things with our mind. And we have had the tendency to come off sharper than we want to. So we're past that now, and that's going to wane as well. So the potential for accidental sharpness in our conversations, that's going to wane progressively. So that I like to see that, but then we still get the benefits of having them together, so Mercury being our cognition, our communication, our exchanges with people, and then Mars and Scorpio just being like that very smooth operator that is getting shit done very well, very effectively. I've been digging that. And we're actually going to have this. When did I say the ingresses were? We're going to have this really nice and effective Mercury Mars combo until the 10th. So I would say, if again, zooming out a little bit, if you've got like, material world shit to get done, my bet is the first 10 days of the month. So yeah, because then Mercury, who is in charge of communication, exchange, commerce, money stuff, technology, Any exchange. Am I exchanging money, ideas, myself in space-time? Any of those things are Mercury. And they kind of start to work a little bit differently, maybe not as like material world effectively after the 10th of November. So we'll talk about the cool stuff about Mercury in Sagittarius after we get to the 10th. But yeah, if I'm doing like paperwork or trying to have communications, first 10 days are better. Oh my gosh, guys, sorry. There's a cardinal right outside my window right now, and they are beautiful. They are large and in charge. I've seen them around, but I haven't seen any in my backyard yet. And I guess total tangent time. So I wish I could show you, because right now I'm facing this really beautiful southern facing window, and I had a bird feeder. We had a bird feeder. We don't know this for sure. We think there was foul play. The bird feeder was on the ground the other week, totally off of its little hook. And I can't help but think there was squirrel foul play involved. But even then, even when we had the bird feeder, I didn't see any pretty boys out there. But wow, we have some now. I'm taking it as a sign. I don't know for what. Okay. Anyway, back on track. Back on track. What was I talking about? We were talking about the first of the month. Let's go to there. Oh, yeah. We were talking about how effective Mars and Mercury were. Yeah. Okay, so that's going on. We know about them. We know we have them until the 10th. Sun is opposing Jupiter. So that's the other interesting thing right now. I'm a really big fan. So quick little aside as well, another astrologer, Gray Crawford, they do a piece of writing and then they usually record it and put it on YouTube as well. But they do that for every lunation, basically. And their writing was so great on this last eclipse that we just had. So check out Gray Crawford's work. I should link it below afterwards. But they were talking about the Jupiter-Sun opposition, and they brought up something that I haven't thought about in a while, which is the curtailed passage of certain planets when they're opposite the Sun. So this is something I tried to bring it in like several months ago, and it was just, I don't know. I guess I didn't get as much value out of it then, and I didn't continue using it, but it was a good reminder to keep an eye on what curtailed passage is. So thank you, Gray Crawford, for putting that back on my radar. But curtailed passage, this comes from Demetra George, Ancient Astrology, Volume 1. Anytime Jupiter, Mars, these planets that oppose the Sun get within 7.5 degrees of either side of that exact opposition, that is a time when that planet visually, when they're rising and setting in the east and west, for whatever reason, I don't understand it astronomically, so I'm not good there yet, but you can't see the planet as well. So it's a visibility thing. And then, of course, anything with visibility, we can get some kind of symbolic information out of that. So anytime a planet becomes invisible or they're not as easily seen, then their significations become kind of inconsistent. So that's interesting. And I don't quite know how to reconcile that with the fact that, visually Jupiter is also very, very bright at this point in time. So, I mean, very, very bright Jupiter right now. They're going through this very prominent culminating kind of point with the Sun. So I would then assume, okay, we got a retrograde Jupiter. They're in this curtailed passage right now. So their significations of understanding might be a little inconsistent. Maybe we're still working through understanding certain situations, particularly those ruled over by Jupiter. So look into your Sagittarius and Pisces areas. So for me, that would be my friends and my money, my friends and my resources, maybe my aspirations and my resources and money. All of those things are kind of really highlighted right now, very prominent, like what is going on with those. But at the same time, we might not have a lot of certainty or answers yet. But those things are probably coming up very prominently in all of our charts. So that's something to look at. See what's culminating there, especially if we can think back. And now I need to spend more time with this because I'm not quite sure for myself, but we had the Jupiter Cazimi. So Jupiter conjoined the Sun back in April. So if you want to think back to the beginning of this cycle of Jupiter and Sun, when they met. Oh, I want to get it up here. Yeah, so April 11th, we had this beautiful Jupiter Sun conjunction in Aries in April of 2023. And that was the beginning of something new for the Jupiter ruled areas of our charts. So again, in my own example, maybe my friend groups or my aspirations or my money. Something started in April, and now we're seeing the fruit of that. We're seeing like, how has that kind of culminated and come into being, and what is really peaking now from whatever began in April when it comes to Jupiter stuff. Jupiter is also learning, truth, knowledge, wisdom, all those things. So it could be a learning journey for a lot of us. It could be a teacher, mentor type journey, whether you have one or you are the one. Any of those kind of things. Jupiter. That's what's going on with them. I keep telling people too, like I have been noticing in consult with my clients that Jupiter retrograde is really having an effect. Like it does. And it's the rearranging of these areas of our lives. And Jupiter stations direct on January 1st of this year. So this year is so interesting because last year when we had January Gregorian calendar turnover, a lot of things were retrograde. It really didn't feel like a new year, at least not until like, I feel like February, March, when things were starting to go direct and gain speed. This year, we've got Mercury stationing direct, Jupiter stationing direct. Saturn will be direct, but finally starting to build up speed. I feel like there's another thing that's happening around the first of the year where I think it's really going to feel like the first of the year, but the advice that I continually just keep giving everyone is like, look at the Jupiter ruled areas of your chart. Look at the house topics governed over by by Jupiter in those Pisces, Sagittarius areas. I'm guessing that those are going to kind of be up in the air until January, or that, once January comes, we're going to start to begin to have a better idea about how those areas are going to look. So let yourself be experimental, let yourself be open-ended with it. Don't be hard on yourself if those things kind of haven't been coming into form the way that you would like. So that's what's going on with Jupiter. I just want to talk about them. And that was probably, maybe something, with the Taurus areas as well are coming into this. And I'm guessing that the eclipse we just had probably really brought that into stark relief. So, looking at the in this case too, the Scorpio area of your chart to ascertain what this eclipse just meant for you. And on that note, I said we were going to talk about it and then I didn't. How was everybody's eclipse season? Like, I know we're not done yet, but does anyone have anything they want to share? Does anyone have any like cool stories? I'll start because I'm going to post about it, but I haven't yet. Let's see. Oh, Victoria, Saturn's on your stuff. Oh, yeah. So what I was talking about with the mutable transits of the moon being maybe a little tough, especially if you have a lot of mutable placements, because it's highlighting that Saturn stuff there in Pisces. Yeah, Victoria's feeling that. I am as well. We have to be so kind to ourselves. Saturn is judgment, so much judgment. If I'm speaking for myself, at least. So yeah, we have to be nice to ourselves. Well, it's like this like reminding, like I must be nice to myself. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Dragons. Every eclipse, I'm always looking for dragons. So I got to be real about confirmation bias here that, when you're looking for something, you tend to see it, you tend to find it, you tend to hear it. That in mind. And I will bring up why dragons are important. Some of you might already know this if you know about Rahu and Ketu and that story. But my ratio of like dragons per day has increased dramatically this month. And it only started on the 13th, which is when the last eclipse happened, the solar eclipse. So that's been my thing, is like so many dragons. And it happened last fall too, when we had a very similar kind of eclipse to what we're having now. So yeah, I don't know. And also it's Halloween time. So there's that to consider. And some of the dragons have been Halloween related. So I have to take that into account if I'm being skeptical. However, still, day per dragon like ratio has increased like significantly, dragons per day. Dragons, what are they about? So all like the eclipse kind of traditions and myths in the cultures, there's so many of them. All the cultures have their different kind of eclipse myths, but a lot of them have to do with the sun or the moon getting bites taken out of them by various animals or beasts. And in some of the Eastern cultures, traditions, it is a snake or a dragon, serpent kind of creature. So that's where, in this case, the dragon is the animal. Yeah, has anyone else been having anything? Reverend Kai says Libra eclipse, the solar eclipse was okay, very low energy. Yesterday's eclipse was great. Also, your solar return. Happy birthday. Oh my gosh, that means you might have the same birthday as my brother because it was his birthday yesterday. And you had an amazingly productive day, lots of good connecting with family. Good. I'm glad to hear that. I hope it's a really good year. I'm very curious because I was thinking about my brother's solar return chart because I was like, oh, eclipse is baked in for the year for him. I wonder what that's going to be about. And I do know what it's about already, which I should probably talk to him about that. But yeah, I'm then I'm going to be watching, like a little creepy biologist person in the corner. Sorry, Reverend Kai. But I'm kind of curious to see how it turns out if y'all have the same kind of thing baked in. That's going to be exciting. Yeah, for him, I know he doesn't watch this. No one from that sphere of my life watches this, so it doesn't matter. But I think he's in the process already of a kind of like a career change, and I think that's what that's just going to be loud for him this year. Then, so I would assume whatever houses the eclipses are falling in, I wouldn't expect calamity or anything in a solar return chart if you have an eclipse in it. But big change, like clearly big change, is happening and afoot. So it's kind of like, don't fight the tide. I know you know that, but for any of our other dear listeners, don't fight the tide. It's coming. Well, I hope it goes okay this year. I hope so. Right. Oh, someone had dental work. Wife signed paperwork. Ooh, whoa, ooh, nice. That is really exciting. Okay, yeah, I would if I had to. Well, I guess I shouldn't say I haven't been to either places, but that sounds very exciting to me. All right. Yeah, I mean, I get the anxiety totally too. I mean, it makes sense. Like for 2000 years, when astrology was being developed, where was that coming out of? It was coming out of a culture where we didn't have like all the explanations in the world for how things worked. And when your average person saw an eclipse, it was like very disconcerting. It's like our life-giving light is being interrupted. That is not usually a good sign. So we can see even at a really primal level how like, yeah, if the sun and the light's moon is interrupted, that's very strange. And so likewise, I would expect really interesting things to happen down here. Yeah, a lot going on. Not the norm, at least. Okay. What else? Yeah, I think that was, yeah, and the void of course moons. So that was the other thing. I put it on, I think it was the Q&A, the last month's Q&A, but I was talking about void of course moon. And recently Levant Laszlo of the Horoi Project did a really awesome, it was like a 2-hour talk on different ways that the ancients defined the void of course moon. And there's a lot of different definitions, very different than what I think a lot of us are used to from like William Lilly and the Renaissance tradition, or even the Hellenistic definition. There's a lot of ways of looking at what it is. But I think the underlying thread after watching that presentation, or one of the underlying threads, was this question of the moon getting support from other planets, or the other way. Like it's kind of a two-way street, the other planets having that connection with the moon. And then if you bring in like maybe later, or I guess, I don't know, I shouldn't talk about timeline because I'm not sure, but the Hermetic traditions of like then our component of the moon interacting with us and us interacting with the moon, and the moon being that intermediary between us and the planets and beyond, the moon kind of being out of step with those connections and what the consequences of that is. I think that's kind of this underlying thread of void of course moon, even though we all might have kind of slightly varying definitions and might be using different planetary bodies to look at, what makes our definition. Because if you're using Pluto versus not, that's going to change a lot of when we're going to have them and how often. Now, what are they that I'm talking about? It's basically a time where, when down here, practically speaking, how we experience it, at least how I experience it and how I've seen other people talk about it, is like a lot of stuff just doesn't work. A lot of material world things. The moon is our material world experience. Like the main phrase that's used is that whatever begins under a void of course moon, nothing will come of it. Nothing will happen. It will not come to completion. It will not come to succession. So if you say, apply for a job or start a project or announce something, and you do it when this moon is in this really unsupported or disconnected state, in the material world sense, it doesn't work out so well. And my experience of just like this month, I'll try to go with the flow. And like, if it's a void of course moon, like a really Hellenistic, great, strong one that lasts for 3 days, I'm going to plan for that. I'm going to plan accordingly. I'm not going to push myself. I'm not going to, if I'm feeling tired, I'm going to honor that. I'm going to focus more on spiritual type things, not material world stuff as much as you can get away with. That's a huge privilege. We got to cook, we got to work, we got to do this stuff. But this month I really ignored all of the astrology. I just did a bunch of stuff. I went out there, I lived my life. I did not change my behavior or my actions really at all. It's kind of like the equivalent would be like going about the world and never checking the weather and just being like, if it rains, I get wet. And then it happens. I'm not even going to bring a raincoat, or like not bringing sunscreen. Like that's how I've been rolling this month. And I think when you do that, you get really vivid examples of what the astrology is doing. So I did get wet from the proverbial rain in this case. And like trying to get food took like so much effort and extra tries and extra things and short distance travel, all kinds of little thingies there, and those are the moon's main things, is like, short distance travel and nourishing of physical forms. And those were not online. I tell you what, those were not online. So people can tell me all day long that void of course moons are not important, or that like, the Hellenistic grade ones aren't as, or they're just as potent as any of the other ones. And I'm like, I don't know about that, y'all. Like it was something else. So all in all, lessons we learned. I can choose to listen to the weather or not, and I'll probably live. I think that's maybe the message. But yeah, that's the past. That's the past stuff I wanted to talk about. I don't know if anyone had any like sad void of course moon stories of like your cake not turning out like the picture or things of that nature. Yeah, Kai, that was a really, yeah. So you saw that void of course moon talk. It was a lot. I'm going to be honest. I didn't understand all of the things that he said in that talk. But it was good to at least get the breadth of things, and see the wide spectrum of diversity. And that was just another beautiful example of how much diversity in the history of like Hellenistic era astrology and Persian Islamic era astrology. There's so much diversity in those traditions. And we can see that just with this one concept, like how many different ideas there were about it. So this is where knowing history stuff, I know it's kind of boring sometimes, but okay, let's keep moving. What day are we on? On the 2nd of November. Let's go back to this. So last little thing, just, I think Mercury and Mars are going to be really good at getting to the bottom of whatever they're doing. Like, I don't think, we're going to be just a bunch of ninnies out there, just not, being wise or smart. At the same time, Jupiter, who is truth, Jupiter, who is understanding, they're not reliable. So I think, if we don't have all the facts like this first week of November, just like wait till Jupiter moves on a little bit further. And don't assume that you understand everything entirely. Like, especially if you're signing contracts, this is some weather to definitely read things 3 or 4 times. Let's see. Moon's monthly opposition with Pluto, and then there's a little benefic enclosure. Okay, so this is on the 3rd, once the moon gets into Cancer. They're going to have their monthly opposition with Pluto, which, like, I don't know, I've been noticing it. It's just usually kind of an emotional, pressurized kind of day. And that'll be, in the house topics that are represented by your chart. But it's kind of a little bit of a soft mind your own business day. I have my own business days. There's like 4 or 5 of them this month. This is like a soft one on the 3rd of November. If people are being weird, if you feel weird, just like, sleep on it. Keep to yourself. Sometimes it can wait a day. But there is a nice little, was that true? Was there a benefic enclosure here? Hold on a sec. Let me make sure. Oh yeah, only if using the visible planets. So I'm going to play with that for a second. So if we're only going by, no, that's not true either. There's not one here. I don't know why I said that. There's a benefic enclosure later in the month though. The only other thing that happens on the 3rd, so besides that moon opposite Pluto, we also get Mercury opposite Uranus heating up. So by the 3rd of November, we've got Mercury 3 degrees away from Uranus. Whenever we get in, it's called engagement, is when we get within 3 degrees of an aspect being exact or partile by degree. So by this point on November 3rd, it's not partile yet, but Mercury's really heating up into this. So what is Mercury opposite Uranus? I was reading a little bit from Robert Hand's Planets in Transit, and it sounds like kind of like intellectual gremlin mode. That's what it sounded like to me. So gremlin mode, like just kind of going feral, no regard for the rules, just like just going nuts basically. And in a like intellectual cognitive kind of way. So we get a really smart brain, a very fast brain, very quick to understand, learn, read, speak, all of these things. Because both, we don't think about like, well, at least I don't think usually about Uranus as like fast and pacing. Like, I don't think we think about the pacing of Uranus when we see them show up in the real world, but they are sudden. They're sudden, and that is a very fast thing. You're usually in and out very quick. So there is that quickness, and we're kind of trying to balance that with intellectual cognitive processes. So we can get thinking that is a little too fast, a little scattered, potentially inaccurate because we are going too fast. Now, again, I think Mercury's kind of restrained a bit in Scorpio with Mars here, making sure that there is veracity, like we are accurate about what we're coming to. But this is another kind of sleep on it thing. So between like Mercury opposite Uranus, moon opposite Pluto, this could be a day of like intense feelings, wanting to be quick to say or just understand something. And maybe, again, we already talked about one person that was compromised in understanding. So yeah, it was just like sleep on it. Yeah. Yeah, this is where like, if we're feeling like we need to say something to someone, like just make sure you actually do need to say something to someone. And even like the eclipses themselves, one underlying thread to that I've noticed the last few years is just this sense of urgency. Like when the eclipses are happening that month, everything feels like we have to figure it out right now. And I catch myself doing that every single time. And it got me. It always gets me once. And then I'm like, oh, I got. And then I like, keep my shit together for the rest of that transit. But this time it was with my mom. I was like, I must talk about my mother with this thing right now. And you know what? It was the worst timing ever. I shouldn't have done that. That was very unskillful. And if I just would have waited, the issue that I was concerned about would have gone away on its own. So like at every single eclipse, there's one thing that does that. And I'm never, on the other hand, I have never regretted waiting to have a conversation, waiting to do a thing until after that lunation cycle is over, which is not until November. Yeah, not until our next new moon. So hang on until like the middle of November if you can. Hang on till the next new moon. If it feels urgent, ask yourself if it is. Okay. Let's see. Keep track of your good ideas, but sleep on them. Another way I thought about that too, that's totally different, would just be, I can see Mercury trying to plan things out in the Scorpio area of our chart. but then having some curveball in the Taurus part. So like this would be if I was using myself, my 10th house, I'm trying to do things with my career, or I'm trying to do a trajectory in life, like, and plan for it. But then there's some instability maybe in my living situation or home or my private life, or a change or a curveball. Maybe I'm trying to plan my career for the next 2 months. And then my mom's like, oh, well, Christmas dinner is happening on this week. And you have to be there for it, and I might have to change my plans or something. I can totally imagine that happening. Actually, it's probably going to happen now that I said it. So yeah, we got to I think we might have to roll with things a little bit with this Mercury Uranus opposition as well. On the 4th, Mercury still applies to that opposition. And now we get Saturn stationing. So, Saturn's already been kind of slowing down to a stop, and then it's going to stop and go the other direction again, very slowly. I wanted us to ponder about the Pisces areas of our charts and the Saturn ruled areas. So Capricorn, Aquarius. So that this chunk of your chart, basically. So whatever house topics those fall into, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, all these areas of life are currently probably doing a big wide turn, kind of like a big ship making a big wide turn out in the ocean. It takes a while to reorient the ship. And we are in the ship reorientation period, and will continue to be, because then Saturn needs to pick up speed again. And that's going to take a little bit. For those of you who have placements in early Pisces in the first 7 degrees, for those of you who have placements in early Sagittarius, early Virgo, early Gemini, now Saturn's going to be starting to make that final third pass over those planets and angles to those planets. So hang in there. You got that third pass, that can be rough when Saturn is, it's a long story with Saturn. And then they will get to that 7 degrees that they stationed at. They stationed June, what was it? June 17th is when Saturn stationed retrograde at 7 degrees of Pisces. They're going to be back up there in January, February already. So that kind of third pass, actually, we'll look at it right here. Yeah, by February 4th, we've already got Saturn at 6 degrees, almost 7. So yeah, for those of you who have had Saturn passing over these things in early Pisces, by mid-February, just get yourselves to mid-February. And then you'll be done with that story. Hopefully it'll be more and more in the rear view mirror. All right. So Saturn is stationing direct. Saturn retrograde too. If Saturn is our discipline and that kind of faculty, retrograde Saturn can be inconsistent discipline. So Saturn stationing direct can sometimes be us getting back on our bullshit. So this is a slow return to getting back on our bullshit, though. So give yourself time. Certain, if Saturn is bringing form and edges and boundaries to things and kind of giving them some shape, that's been kind of a deconstructing process recently. And only now in the future might we, I think, start to see more form about how things are going to really take shape and look, especially in the Pisces area of our chart, and also the Capricorn, Aquarius. So yeah, I've been looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. But also knowing, don't be hard on yourself. If things have been kind of not taking shape and kind of going backward, it's kind of 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Don't be hard on yourself if that's what your second house, or not that's mine, what your Pisces house has been looking like. If that's what it's been like, that makes sense. You weren't doing it wrong. It just had to get reorganized or delayed for a little bit. It might just be a delay. Sometimes Saturn is just those delays. So now, hopefully moving forward, those delays will be regular level and not extreme level. Reading our links here. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention too, there's a bunch of links I put below in the notes. I've got my dates of interest, my newsletter sign up. But then I am going to talk a little bit about later, more like astrology community kind of ranting. So stay tuned. Woo! I promise it won't be spicy. But I also wanted to provide some supportive things for right now, because the world's crazy right now. If anyone didn't notice, world is rough. It always is. It feels extra raw right now. And I think we could all use a little bit of support. So I've got a really great article that was given to me by an internet friend. What is their name? Cosmic something on Twitter, but they gave me this article on grief. That's really great. It's like a 3-minute read. There's a little TED talk on being a sensitive person. That's really nice if you're a sensitive person like me. Jacoby Ballard on anger and sustainability. If you are in activist circles or surrounded by, just the world and feeling angry about it, and how to hold that anger in a way that is honoring it, but also sustainable to our bodies and our nervous systems. It's a really great article down there. How to Keep Your Heart Open in Hell by Ram Dass. I just recently listened to that. That was very inspiring. It talks about compassion and how to be open-hearted when it's so painful. And then another link to a sutta from good old Buddha that we'll be looking at later, to help us understand how to know when to say things or not on the internet or in real life. So we'll be looking at some of those things a little later in the show. Stay tuned. Let's get back to the weather. I don't remember why I got into that. Let's see. So on the 4th, Saturn is stationing direct. We are going to be kind to ourselves while Saturn speeds up and we get going with things that maybe we felt like we've been spinning our tires on. At this point, also on the 4th, 5th, we're getting our 3rd quarter moon in Taurus. So now this still is very pertinent to the eclipses. There's the sun today. We just had our eclipse here, and now by the 5th, we're going to have our 3rd quarter phase of this lunation cycle. So at this point, any eclipse narratives that have come up, anything that's come up with those, this will be another turning point, a little moment of tension as we kind of figure out what everything was about, wrap up any storylines or projects that we've been working on. My project, I'll just be real with y'all for a minute, part of my little eclipse journey has been my reactivity. I'm so reactive. Wow, as a person. Very bork, bork, bork. If I were a dog, I would need a muzzle, I think, if I was a doggy. So that's been mine. So I expect for me, when November 5th comes around, I might get prodded on that a little bit. My little internal journey on that might get poked, So if you get prodded during this, yeah, that could be it. So hang in there on the 5th. And then we get to the 6th. Oh, there's a moon square Mars. Is that another mind your own business day? Just kidding. So this yeah. On the 5th, mind your own business day. I mean, I don't know, something about, at least during the day, mind your own business during the day, when the moon has to deal with Mars, and is also getting this overcoming square from Uranus. So we're kind of, the moon is also walking and feeling into what is building of this Mars and Uranus kind of very unstable opposition, which we're going to talk about. So yeah, November 5th is kind of a crunchy day. Yeah. The T-square with, I also, the T-square between Jupiter and the Scorpio planets. That was another thing too I was wondering about. One thing I didn't mention with the sun opposite Jupiter, which we're having right now, is just anytime we have like Sun, Mars, like these planets of agency, will, autonomy, leadership, when they're meeting Jupiter, who is like buoyant and loud and bombastic potentially, like when those meet by hard aspect, square or opposition, there's a potential for like this kind of arrogant, belligerent, Randy Savage kind of energy coming forth. So on the 5th, you know, if we're feeling really like we have to say something because we're right and everyone else is wrong, and you know, if we're feeling sharp, like just step back a little bit, be Homer Simpson into the bush and sleep on that one. Because yeah, it's just, and Moon is in really expressive Leo. So I just have a feeling like on the 5th, if we're really activated, we could get ourselves into a little bit of trouble. Or if we're just feeling that kind of tension internally on the 5th, that would make sense. So if you are feeling kind of tense on the 5th, just take care of yourself and others and all of that. But yeah, that potential for like macho extra-ness with Mars and Jupiter, and yeah, it's just could be a lot. And that's going on a little bit right now too, honestly. Like all of that is still going on now. And I'm seeing it. I mean, honestly, every time I log in online lately, and this probably has to do with my own stuff too on my own chart, but people are saying very declarative, firm statements lately. That's the style. Like I watch the style of people and what they say online, and like you can tell when people are feeling more bold. And I'm like, yeah, people are feeling very bold right now. Like, and I think it's like, yes, this is how it is, and clearly this is how it is. Then Moon is opposite Saturn on the 6th, so we get excuse me. Get the Moon applying to Saturn here. By the afternoon on the 6th, on Monday, so 3:30 Central Time, this clears. So it's mostly morning to afternoon in the West, afternoon to evening in the East. If you can just get past that on Monday. Monday on the 6th is not the day to ask for stuff from people, because you might get rejected because Saturn is rejected. So I always tell people that if I'm going to ask for something, if this were me, I wouldn't be asking for stuff on this day. I want to wait until Moon clears Saturn, and then the Moon's going to be applying to a nice trine with Jupiter and with Venus. So I like the 7th and the 8th much more than the 5th and the 6th. So yeah, 5th and the 6th, let's all just hang in there. And then on the 6th and the 7th, we'll probably feel better and people will probably be in a better mood. Venus is opposite Neptune on the 6th. That was the other interesting, there's a lot of interesting oppositions this month. Mars opposite Uranus, Mercury opposite Uranus, Venus opposite Neptune was another one. And this is, I mean, Venus is in Virgo. She knows what she likes. She knows what she doesn't like. She has preferences, desires, and she's really exacting about how about those and about how they're going to be met, you know? And that's neither good nor bad. It just is. That's how Venus functions here. She's got specific tastes, damn it. And looking over, and that goes for relationships too, specific needs in relationship. And this is trying to be reconciled with Neptune, which is a fantasy or an illusion or an ideal form. So we've got kind of this very practical, pragmatic versus the liminal and ideal and ineffable. And Venus is very much trying to put it into writing. And like, she's like, no, this is very algorithmic and plain to see that this is what I want. That doesn't necessarily jive. You know, what is there does not necessarily jive with what we desire, like ideally. So watch your expectations, I guess, in practical English terms, just watch your expectations of people, watch your expectations of relationship, of the pursuit of pleasure, the pursuit of beauty or art. This is one where it's like, if we're disillusioned, you know, so much of Saturn coming into Pisces is about disillusionment and coming into that more harsh reality of things. Don't set yourself up for failure. Don't set yourself up for disappointment. That would be what I would say with kind of this whole first week of November as Venus approaches Neptune, and especially on the 6th and the 7th. You know, if you feel like you're getting disappointed by people, if people are irritating you because they're not, you know, living up to things, or you know, even yourself, it'll pass. It will pass. Yeah, and at the same time, Mercury's trining Neptune. So I kind of wonder if this will be a decent time, actually, you know. So maybe in those material world and relational functions, there could be some challenges, but I also really like, from an artistic or spiritual kind of direction, a metaphysical direction, if I'm like doing ritual or working on anything like that, it seems like a really great time to plan ritual. Like if you're, I mean, if you're like an astrological magic person, you have all kinds of big operations that you do. I feel like this would be decent weather to go about that. It's like you've got Mercury helping you out with that, doing a really good exacting job, in Scorpio with it as well. A musician, be great for making music, making art, making love. Maybe it'd be a good time for making love. I don't know, but it feels good for those types of things, as long as our expectations are held very loosely and lightly. It is hard to not have expectations, so we just have to be aware when they're there. I think that's the main thing. It's not that if you have expectations, like your brain's not working or like there's something wrong with you. We're all going to have them, but it's just like, yeah, no, they're there, and don't be sad if, you know, things don't work out. Don't be sad for too long, I should say. All right, Jupiter, Scorpio, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's like there's some things working together, but there are some oppositions in this as well. You know, we had mentioned all of the sextiles, all of these nocturnal planets. But within this, you know, yes, a lot of trines and sextiles and parts of our, essentially areas of our life, are working together really harmoniously. There's a lot of different areas of our lives right now that are probably working together, at least in some kind of constructive way. At the same time, we do still have a few oppositions. We do have some things within, you know, yeah, there's some things working. There are some things progressing. This area in my life is helping this area in my life. You know, these people are helping me over here, but I'm still having some other things in my life that do feel like a bit of a balancing act. So it's like, yeah, there's some struggles, but I do think we are surrounded by support. It's just knowing how to leverage that support. And that's what a sextile really is about. You know, so many of these sextiles are about having to put in that, you know, Venus is two coming together. We don't just wait for things to come to us. You know, like Jupiter might just bring us a lottery ticket or something. A sextile, we need to meet something else, you know, and bring two things together, two energies together, I think sometimes. So we might have to put in a little bit of work, but I think we are surrounded by some help. Then on the 8th, the help gets helpier, because at least, I mean, sorry for the Virgo planets, you know, you lose Venus. It's always bye Venus. But we do now have Venus in Libra. Yay, on the 8th. So nice. I'm so excited. So Venus in Libra, we have 2 glorious days where we have Venus in Libra and we have Mercury in Scorpio still. Now, I know they can't communicate. I'm not worried about that, but I want a couple of days where I don't have Mercury in Sag. That's going to be cool for its own reasons, which we'll talk about. But there's something, I don't know, I just feel like the 7th and the 8th, it's like we got this powerful Venus and we have this really powerful Mars in Scorpio, and Mercury is at the behest of Mars still. So it's very effective for peopling, for so many strategic planning type things. And that now Venus is adding the charming relational diplomatic element. So like whatever we are planning, now we're making sure it's ethical. We're making sure it's sustainable. We're making sure everyone's on board. We're making sure, you know, all of these nice Libran things are getting added to are these really effective Scorpio things. And that's how we close out this lunation cycle. So we get the moon coming with Venus into Libra. I'm looking forward to these days. There's probably a nice election in here somewhere. The sky's not perfect, and never is, but I do like a couple of these things. Now, what else do we got in the 8th. I should say, so another thing too, now that Venus is in a different sign, she is no longer being opposed by Saturn, and she is also no longer in communication with Mars for the time being. And she has an increase in her dignity. She now is in a sign where she's well resourced and resourced in the way that she would prefer. Versus in Virgo, it's not like Venus can't Venus in Virgo. Venus can be charming and beautiful and all those awesome Venus things in Virgo. But they have to do it in a little different way because they're not given the tools or resources that Venus would normally choose. Now in Libra, like, yeah, we've got classic bombshell, but also classic diplomat, warrior queen Venus here. It's awesome. I am excited. And that all together, not being opposed by Saturn and increase in dignity and not even in communication with Mars, this feels pretty improvement. This feels like an improvement. And an improvement for what? An improvement for relationship, an improvement for the pursuit of joy in a way that is easeful and simple, a way to have relationship or love or beauty or any of those things in a way that is more easeful. It does make us more aware as well of these things. And that necessarily is not a pleasurable experience. So, I think we think a lot of like what Venus is in terms of the material, like senses, like what do I like to taste, touch, smell, feel with Taurus kind of Venus, Earth Venus, nighttime Venus, and Libra in daytime air, diurnal, externalizing, influencing things around it Venus. Now this is intellectual as well. This goes beyond like sense pleasure and those things. This is more into the intellectual sphere, and it's relational, and it might have to do with beauty. So we get things like ethics and morals and justice and a deep awareness of that. And sometimes during Libra season, our awareness can get heightened to a sense of like this is upsetting. There's an injustice here. And then we see Venus not being about puppies and kittens and softness and connection like she usually is. I mean, she's still about connection, but now she's going about that topic from a different angle. And being kind of I call it warrior queen Venus. If anyone remembers like Xena warrior princess, that is my like person that I use to describe Libra. Because when we do see injustice, it's like, there's no time for that at all. And if you look at like the Mesopotamian traditions, Inanna, Ishtar, they were chopping heads off. They were doing some serious acts of retribution and justice when there was injustice. So this is by no means like, I don't want to paint, a Libra in domicile transit like it's always going to feel good. And it's always going to be like this just, I don't know, bacchanalian kind of like, yeah, all the juices. For me, it can be like, especially if your values are challenged, if there are injustices around you, which, oh my God, open your eyes for a second. And it can start to get unpleasant in kind of what we would call an unworldly way in Buddhist tradition, about just like bad feels that go beyond the material world, spiritually bad feels. So I digress. That was my little love letter to Venus and Venus and Libra. But if you do have art to do, if you got charming stuff to do or be, this is the time. This is the time to put on your charming pants and your diplomacy hat and, work the room, do your thing. It is a good time for that. And we're going to have her there until it's November 8th until December 4th. So she will help us. There's going to be some other weather happening that's going to be pretty spicy. And what I am so thankful for is like whatever is happening in Sag, Capricorn, Aquarius, any of the planetary transits that happen down here, Venus for the month is going to be looking down upon it, kind of sprinkling her diplomacy dust, or at least like giving us that mom glare of like, hey, be nice. If you don't have anything nice, don't say anything at all. within reason. Like we still have to say things, kindness is not always nice. We know this. And so Venus is going to have, being she's earlier in zodiacal order, she's quote unquote overcoming all of these other things and is going to be really helpful. So as much as like Sag, I'm like, oh, what's going to happen there? I do think we're going to, if we really lean on to Venus and Libra principles of diplomacy and balance and being intellectual and equanimous, that's the ticket. I mean, that's always the ticket, but yeah. Okay, what else about this Venus ingress? Anything? Mars Uranus opposition is heating up at this point. Venus is also going to help with that. She's helping us pick our battles wisely, because Venus will battle. She will definitely battle in Libra, but she's going to be very, very wise about it. Let's look at this Mars. Yeah, so by mid-November, if there are battles arising, choose them wisely. Set them down. Set down some of those battles, like the meme says. Set down more. So this is what I want to point out. Now we've got Mars opposite Uranus and approaching within 3 degrees. So we're in this area of engagement, and it's going to heat up. It's going to be strong. So what is Mars opposite Uranus starting about around the 9th or 8th or 9th? We might really be feeling it. We might feel it before, there's no discrete day where it's like on or off. It builds and then falls and falls. But what's building here then? A lot of agency, will, wanting to do a thing, and going up against interruptive forces, disruptive forces, someone who doesn't want you to do that potentially, or a circumstance that just doesn't allow it. I might want to do a lot of things, but there's a lot of circumstances that don't allow me to do a lot of things. And that might be really, really frustrating come the end of the week on the 8th and 9th and beyond. So this is going to require some patience. Now, Scorpio has a lot of patience usually. Now it will hold on to things and get pressurized and explode. That's not the kind of patience I'm talking about. That's not patience. That's just, suppression, repression, whichever one that is, both of them. But I think we'll be able to do it. And again, we have a really strong Venus that's going to be helping us kind of off to the side a bit. So yeah, I guess just if you feel irritated, if you feel like impatient, just label it. It's Mars opposite Uranus. I just have to hang in there. And that's a big cycle too. So of course we had a square previously of Mars to Uranus. That happened in Leo. And that was June 26th of 2023. So if you can, and this is again something that I need to do some homework on as well. I'm not sure if it's coming up for me as anything, but think back to any kind of frustration or challenge that you might have had back in the end of June, or any kind of big effort that you were doing back in June. It might have been something you were totally happy and whistling while you were doing it, but it was kind of intense or disruptive or of that nature. Think about the end of June. And then we're going to have this beginning of November. And then the closing square of Mars Uranus is going to be in March. That's March 9th is going to be the exact partile. So that'll be of 2024. So, whatever battles you have been in or at big efforts, those are going to kind of continue to play out. And the next big kind of brunt of action or disruption will be next March. So if you already know you're going to be like busy next March and you're kind of looking around now and being like, well, if I take on this thing right now, because of course Jupiter is still opposite the sun a little bit, so I might be feeling extra like I can take on the whole world. Think about what your life looks like in March and try to play out if that's going to turn out well or not. On the 9th, we also get the moon in a position here where we're with a benefic and we're not witnessed by either malefic. So that feels kind of nice. I don't know. yeah, the beginning of that week feels kind of crunchy, and it just gets kind of better and better as that week goes on. And then on the 10th, we get Mercury entering Sagittarius. So this is the point at which, like, I hope you got all your logistical stuff done, because now we're in territory of more storytelling, meaning making, symbolic language. Mercury and Sag people are awesome with that. One of my favorite Mercury and Sagittarius people is Brene Brown, and she calls herself a researcher and storyteller. I love that. Other beloved Sagittarius Mercury people, Fionn Cleary, who is just like an astrologer colleague, he has one of those, and he's excellent, poetic, great with symbolic language, clearly good at astrology. Pretty sure they have one of these. I could be wrong. He'll have to tell me if I'm wrong, but I could have swore he had some Sag placements. But yeah, it can be really great for those things. Now, this is a fast fire sign. So what can happen when Mercury, who's about all the details, is going too fast? They're forgetting things. They're leaving things out, forgetting details. Or maybe they understand it and they're getting it, but they're speeding ahead, and everyone else is kind of left in their dust. And then they have to do the inefficient thing of circling back around and explaining it again in a different way or something. So sometimes we can get ourselves into trouble in that way when Mercury is just going too fast. Also, it can be kind of overwhelming for Mercury when they're trying to do all these small details, and they are more of a rational person, and they're trying to bring a bunch of things together and coalesce a bunch of things into like this unified theory of how everything works. We also might be really good at that kind of stuff. So if you do have work to do in your life that is trying to bring together a lot of disparate pieces, particularly in the Sagittarius areas of your chart, have at, November 10th. That's good time to do that. For me, this is pretty much on my midheaven. Sagittarius is my 11th house, but it has to do with my career as well. So I have a feeling by this point, I am going to be wanting to draw in. I've been working on a lot of little things like behind the scenes, and I want to get it all onto my website, like all onto there. So it is a little overwhelming, but I think it's going to be a good time to bring some things together into cohesion. Yeah, just check, just dot your I's and cross your T's, and it's Mercury in antithesis. It's as far away from their home as they could be. Take care doing Mercury things. Don't text and drive. It is a mutable sign. We're going to want to do all of the multitasking. Just, don't get yourself in trouble multitasking. Oh, and I really loved, so I know that I had said like, oh, we got these really nice 2 days on like the 8th, 7th, 8th, 9th or so, when we have Venus in domicile and Mercury ruled by a planet in domicile. So that was cool. But this is also cool. Now we get like a good week to 10 days of this beautiful Mercury Venus sextile, which is very artistic and poetic and really charismatic, great for, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say like spinning any stories, but boy, if you had to, this would be a good time. Mercury is going to have to deal with a square with Saturn there at the beginning. So, but they're in the overcoming position. So Saturn isn't as strong here. Jupiter can't see Mercury, so they're not getting help there from their Lord, but Venus can help. So this is really nice sextile until the 16th by degree. So like they're going to be together really closely for like, what is this? Like a good week, 6 days. But then we still have them by sign very close after that. So again, art, music, poetry, spiritual works, meaning making, storytelling, anything where you need to be charismatic or fun. It is infectious. So like if you wanted something to quote unquote go viral, or try to get a word out about something, this would be a probably effective time to do that. Mercury is unbothered by Mars at the moment. I like a lot of things about Mercury and Sagittarius. It's just, we do have to just make sure all those little material world rational things don't get forgotten. And we do okay. So this is where like all that's can be fun and sounds kind of fun and cool and neat. But we have to remember that Mars is still in this opposition with Uranus. So before Mars opposite Uranus, if something was irritating or frustrating or, whatever, Mercury, our mouthpiece, was at the behest of Mars. Mars was the one saying, hey, you can't say that now. It's not the time. Wait, hold your horses. Now the horses are out of the barn. No one's holding the horses. They are out and they could come out. So, once you say stuff, this is very much I said it and it's gone. So, on the 10th, on the 11th, or on any of the these first days, especially when we're also dealing with Mars opposite Uranus, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Don't just say stuff. If you're really, really excited about something, just, make sure that your motivations are coming from a wholesome place and you don't get yourself into trouble with saying stuff and having it come out too early or in an inappropriate place. All very aspirational. Then we have our Scorpio New Moon. So we're here. We got out of the eclipse season. We got to the finish line. Here we go. It's a very tidy kind of situation because Mars is in-house. They're in Scorpio. They're looking over the whole thing. Venus can't see it. Jupiter can see it though. So that's kind of nice. Very hearkening to now, Jupiter is in that first decan of Taurus. It is like that 5 of Pentacles energy of maybe not feeling like totally resourced, but also trying to grow resources and make them happen. Trying to get to some kind of material stability and having a new start in Scorpio, a new beginning, new chapter opening up. And this is the point on November 13th, where if you had all these things kind of brewing during October, this is the point to release the hounds. Now it is time to go forth. I think with more security and more surety. We're out of this cycle of instability that we've had from the eclipse lunation. So I dig it. I'm looking forward to it. Of course, this is also leading into our Mars Cazimi. At this point, Mars has moved past Uranus. So I think this is going to be quite the buildup. I think we're going to need, between November 1st and November 13th, make sure you are not kind of holding on to things and stewing. I don't want any kind of explosions with this opposition to Uranus. Have little outlets, little releases for whatever martial energy is coming, whether that's irritation, anger, resentment, bitterness, just physical energy that needs to get out in the form of walking or exercise or whatever movement thing. Because Mars also deals with a lot of movement. So it's not always about feelings. Sometimes our body just needs to move around. So definitely these first couple weeks, especially this new moon here, just make sure we have some of these healthy outlets kind of on deck and easily in the front of our mind so that we don't forget. Let's see if I missed anything. Yeah, and at this point too, Mercury had been applying to Saturn. I kind of like that. I'm gonna be honest, like moving back a little bit, because I was just like, okay, make sure the horses don't go out of the barn when we don't want them to. I think our saving grace here could be Saturn. Yeah, so like if the Mars Uranus opposition is getting a spicy, and then we've got this really enthusiastic, fast to speak Mercury and Sag, I do think Saturn could help us out here a little bit. It's going to be uncomfortable. Like it's a square. It can be uncomfortable. But yeah, so maybe on the 10th, 11th, I think we'll be able to restrain ourselves. I think we will have the power to do that. I am thankful Saturn is there. By the time we get to this new moon, Mercury will be away from Saturn, no longer held back. So really now it's like, now nothing's holding it back. It's going. And so whatever new chapters or new ideas, it feels like it's like very quick out of the gate after this. So that's kind of fun. Sounds exciting. I'm excited because it's in my career place. Traditional Cazimi versus later periods. So we've got any planet. I use the visible ones for this. Other people use the outer planets for Cazimi. That's fine. But I use just the visible ones within 1 degree of the sun. So any planet within 1 degree of the sun, for me, is a Cazimi. And this is a nice little patch for that planet because otherwise it's kind of hard to be that close to the sun. It's just very hot and bright. And once we get within 1 degree, it's like you get a little reprieve from that. And so we can actually see again. We have like very clear insight. We're not blinded by these rays. We're able to kind of relax and sink in and hydrate versus having to kind of just be like dehydrated and trudging forward ahead. So it can be a time of insight, and in this case, about Mars stuff. Also Scorpio and Aries stuff, and those parts of our chart. So on the 14th, this starts at about 3:45 p.m. Central Time. It's really, I mean, being Mars and the sun they actually go about the same speed in the sky. Sometimes they're very, very close in speed. Sometimes they're actually going to move along with each other for several days. So we can watch them here. You know, if we have this looser definition, I mean, this Cazimi lasts until the 21st. And then the sun starts to pull away by more than 1 degree. But it's like a whole week of a lot of clarity around Scorpio areas of our chart, Aries areas of our chart, and just, you know, Mars itself and Mars issues. So like a lot of clarity on those. So what could those issues be? Mars is about like that whole umbrella of aversive feelings that I just mentioned. So it can be clarity on those emotions and how we deal with them or transmute them into something else, our understanding of the messages that those emotions bring. It could be clarity or insight around the topics having to do with the Mars ruled areas of our chart. So think about that. So again, for me, it'd be my 10th and my 3rd. Maybe I'm going to have a lot of clarity about my path or about my communication style or about my, 3rd house, whatever it is. So, be looking that week, for any kinds of sense, like really clear, solid senses of understanding about those things. Use of effort, like skillful use of effort. Where am I putting effort and it's not doing anything? It's not appreciated. It's not leading to growth or anything healthy. Where am I putting effort and energy and attention and focus? Because Mars is also attention and focus. I think it is, at least. Where is our attention and our focus getting lost, scattered, wasted, just strategically silly moves, basically, in life? Like, where are we losing out on our energy because our effort is misplaced? There could be a lot of insights this middle of November about that. And, Mars cuts things off. It says no more. I'm not, there's a lot of tolerating of things in Scorpio, especially. And I think Mars can get to that point of saying no more with this. So yeah, examining where we're placing our effort. And then in that equation of effort, rest, which we usually do not think about with Mars. I don't usually think about like not moving, usually I'm thinking about moving. But part of that equation in a grander scheme is making sure that they're in balance. And, I'm not overworking myself, overworking my body or my mind or my mouth or whatever it is, keeping it balanced there. So then the more strict definition of 17 arc minutes, and that's more from the Renaissance, like Persian Islamic into Renaissance traditions. Did I write that down? I did. It's on the 17th of November, and this is the Mars Cazimi within 17 arc minutes, and that's about 12:30 in the morning Central Time. So about 12:30 a.m. Central Time on the 17th. And that lasts until about 9:30 in the evening Central Time on the 18th. So pretty much like 2 days. And then it perfects on the 17th at 11:41 in the evening. So like the moment, the razor sharp moment here would be November 17th, 11:41 p.m. Central Time. And that lasts for about an hour. Yeah. So that's the Mars Cazimi. Lots of clarity around Mars stuff and Mars places. And it's a reset. I guess I should say that too. It's a rebirth. It is a reset for this. The sun goes around and meets Mars once a year. So it could be a time to recommit certain things in the Aries, Scorpio parts of our chart. A good time to refocus, maybe just start something entirely new in those areas. But it is a rebirth, so you can use it for that. That Cazimi is going to close as the moon meets Capricorn on the 18th. I'm not even close. I was at the new moon. Here we go. So here's the Cazimi proper on the 17th, approximately. And at about the same time that that's wrapping up, and the moon is just maybe not even yet visible, but coming into a sliver, it meets Pluto. And this was really interesting to me. There's something going on here. There's like all of this Scorpio stuff. We had the new moon, which is a new beginning. We got a Cazimi, which is a new beginning. And then that sextiling something with Pluto here. It's almost like in this new beginning in Scorpio, we get a little bit of leverage with whatever this unfinished Capricorn Pluto business is for us. So there's something constructive there that happens that the moon is pinging on. I don't know. It just looks constructive, but it looks heavy. It looks, I don't know, like maybe we're seeing like that last little bit that we got to deal with, but we feel like resolved that we can deal with it, whatever that is. On the 19th, we get a nice moon trine Venus. So that'll be a nice little thing after, having moon not in its home with Pluto, all that. That's kind of heavy, more serious. Then on the 19th, the moon is going to get into an air sign, which now means a trine with Venus. So that should feel pretty nice, in a nice square with Jupiter as well. We are getting an overcoming square from Mars, but they're a happy Mars, so I'm not too worried about it. Yeah, so I like that on the 19th. And then we get, what is it? The Mars Saturn opposition. It's slow, but it's going to be entering Sagittarius, and that will be the actual square, but by degree. We can still probably feel it, even though it's an out of sign square, it's still a square, and at least in some part, right? So what does a Mars square Saturn feel like? It's usually pretty frustrating. It is having to really make an adjustment of our motivation and our discipline. And it's like we want to do something, Mars wants to get at it, but Saturn is like, no, but you have to do it this way. You can't just go, collect $200. Like, you can't just do that. You have to actually follow the rules here. You have to follow some kind of restriction or limitation. And that sucks for Mars. And Mars is really powerful. And when a planet is powerful like that, like in Scorpio, they don't tolerate that authority. They're like, no, I'm going to do what I want. F you. So it can be really, really frustrating when that internal conflict can come up, or external conflict. That is not going to perfect for several days. Let's see. Yeah, it's not until the 25th. So I think starting to kind of feel it really heating up on the 19th, 20th. And then by the 25th, that's when it's going to be peaking. So now, depending on what holidays you do, people are going to be at least going home for some holidays where I'm from during this time. And it's not like my favorite holiday weather. Last year's was worse, I feel. Last year during this time, we had a full moon and Mars across Gemini and Sag, and that was like a recipe for all of like the the holiday table discord. This year doesn't feel that like provocative, but it's still a little frustrating and grindy. So this is very much like leave early. If you have some commute to do, if you got to go somewhere for the holidays and get there on time, leave early for sure. Be strategic about your routes, that'll help you. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say about that. It's frustrating. we'll have to be patient. That's one of the signatures of this month is like Mars is opposing Uranus, and then it's going to come into a square with Saturn. And both of those things are classically potentially frustrating transits. And I just don't like to have that over the holidays. Once we get Mars on the 25th into Sagittarius. So that's the other big things. Well, let's talk about Sun. We skipped that. We got to talk about Sun in Sagittarius first. So Sun enters Sagittarius on the 23rd, the 22nd. And the Sun is also approaching this square with Saturn. So it's not just Mars, it's also the Sun. So I'd mentioned on the 19th. So that's true for also the Sun squaring up with Saturn. And that on the 22nd is going to be exact. So it's like right away, as soon as we enter into Sagittarius, it's kind of rude, I feel, because we get into Sagittarius and it's so hopeful. We just got out of Scorpio. It's this Scorpio is like honestly kind of a hellscape sometimes. And Sagittarius is like, finally, I'm free of this. I'm going to go and do this great thing. How exciting. I'm very enthusiastic and optimistic. And it is going to hold on to that optimism. I don't think it's going to be totally washed away, but we are going to get a reality check like as soon as we get in there. So something on November 2nd, probably some reality check or some kind of limitation or restriction coming in. It could be as small as like, I forgot, my lunch and now I have to eat this thing at work. That's sad. It could be sad lunch day. It could be more serious, but it could just be us feeling like, I have this thing I'm really excited about, but I don't have, or I have to wait, or there's some barrier to me doing it. This too shall pass. I think we're going to feel a lot better on the 23rd, 24th. Sun is also, it has the stronger position here. So that's why I'm saying, like, I think we're going to hold on to our optimism pretty well. By the time Mars gets in here with the Sun on the 24th, so now if you're meeting your family for the holidays before the 24th, I feel like that's less spicy. After the 24th, things get more spicy. Why am I going by the hour? I should be going by the day. After the 24th, things get spicier because now you've got the mouthpiece, Mercury, and the fire, Mars, the motivation, the action, the anger, potentially the whatever it is, the will, all of the will. The Sun is here, all the vitality. Yeah, they're going to want to say something. They don't just not say things. Sagittarius with Sun, Mars, and Mercury here in general doesn't just not say stuff. It's probably going to say stuff. So just be careful what stuff you say and to who and where and when and why. Because that could be a thing. And, just the square with Saturn, it's like it says stuff, and then what's one of the pieces of testimony in response? Saturn's like, no, I don't like that. Whatever you're saying or, wanting to do up there in Sag, I have the naysaying to do. Some kind of naysaying is happening. So if you're naysaying yourself or someone else is naysaying you, November 24th or so, that could happen. Do what you will. Don't let it get you down, if you need to not let it get you down. This begins, the 24th begins a few mind your own business days. These were the big ones for me. So can't remember the other ones I said now, but here are some more. So, Mars is going to be in Sagittarius until January 4th. Mercury, they are going to be leaving and coming back. So there's going to be a lot of the Sagittarius energy, like extending into December through December. So pretty much all through the holiday season, we're getting some combinations here where we might have to be patient. I guess before I go any further, I'm going to check in with the chat. I've just been cruising along. Let's see what people are saying. Hey, Adam, I think you're where I left off. Yeah, these eclipses, they were a little rough for me too, if I'm being honest. Had a lot of fun. I did so many fun things, but there were a couple of hiccups. You're having pure turmoil. I'm so sorry. hang in there till the 13th. We're gonna do a whole new lunation cycle. Oh, Saturn's on top of your ascendant. When Saturn is on your sun, your moon, your ascendant, I mean, kind of a lot of things, but when Saturn is really on your personal points or squaring them, I recently had a client that was getting all these squares of Saturn to all of their stuff. It's such a rough time. It can just, we're really hard on ourselves, or stuff just isn't working, or it's just spinning your tires. Like I'm trying to do things and it's just slow. Like Saturn just makes us feel old, slow, kind of cold, harsh. Like it's just, yeah, it requires a lot of remembering, like, to be soft and nice to ourselves. Yeah. Saturn is judgment, embarrassment, all of those things. It's just like this wanting to kind of constrict. So the opposite of Saturn then is the sun. So we want to open and we want to, remember the awesome stuff about ourselves. Ideally, but hang in there. Hashtag relatable content. Yeah, I hope you like my links. I love all those links. Danny Brown has Venus opposite Neptune in their birth chart. If you have anything you want to share about that experience, if you're, I can imagine that kind of being able to balance that practical use of art and beauty in relationship and potentially do it in a way that is like transcendent and spiritual or mystical, or like if you find the balance point of the opposition. It's like usually I feel like oppositions, we're either kind of oscillating back and forth between the two poles. But in that kind of oscillation back and forth, we find the little balance points. It's like when I thought about this once when I was doing yoga and I was doing like downward dog, and they made us pick up one arm and then made us pick up our opposite leg. So you're just kind of balancing on this diagonal between your one arm and opposite leg. And like, it was really hard. It took so much effort, but then you can get a kind of a cool balance and feel really strong and like work some muscles. And I find when people have oppositions like that, so like a Venus and Virgo opposite Neptune and Pisces, you could make some very cool things. But then the other side of that coin would be some of the other things we mentioned of like, yeah, what are my expectations though? Because like Virgo, it's like, yeah, there's only, I see the perfect version. There's that ideal over in Pisces, but the real world happens. And then we're like disappointed, or it's not turning, the cake is not like the picture. But the thing with the Venus Virgo people is that I think their standards can be so high. It's like, yeah, your cake doesn't look like the picture, but you made like this, British baking show level cake. So, don't be so hard on yourself. Yeah. So that's kind of the vibe I get with that. Oh, oppositions. They're so tricky. Thanks, Holly. I appreciate you. Hello, Sam. Sam's been feeling like they should be doing and saying a lot of things like right now. Oh, me too. Oh my gosh. Like, thank God I have this outlet, because like I said, I've needed a muzzle for the better part of the last month. Like I always say, my Twitter drafts, or like, I guess now my threads, which threads doesn't have drafts, which has been an exercise in spiritual development for me, because now I don't even get the drafts. My drafts are amazing, but I'll never release any of them. That's me wanting to just like say all the things. Like most days, like very few days go by where I don't write some kind of irritated essay. I like basically go online. I'm just telling on myself. I just probably am making myself sound like an asshole, but I mean, but like, I read so many things online I disagree with constantly, from like people I love, people I don't love, everybody. It's like lately, especially since Rahu got into Aries in my third, I feel like I'm the most disagreeable person on the planet. But I'm not letting it out. I'm not letting all of my internal stuff cause ripples out in the world unnecessarily. So I write essays and create content, and I just kind of then use that as motivation to kind of create my own stuff. But yeah, like even like And that's more of like a negative slanted version. But like, if I think about it positively, I also get really excited to like share things, really excited to share my ideas. When I have an understanding of something and it was helpful, I immediately want to share it like right now. I don't want to wait. And I find that everything is better when I wait. So like, even like the happy stuff I want to share, like ever since Rahu North Node got into Aries, I'm like, this is going to be a long year and a half because it's so hard for me to just, so much stuff I want to share. So yeah, I feel you, Sam. I feel you. Um, Sagittarius is so optimistic. It's so great. I love charts too that have like Saturn, Jupiter kind of stuff together, or like Sun and Saturn kind of stuff with Jupiter. They can just be like indomitable in the way that like there's hard things, but they just believe. They just believe. It's so nice. Oh, thanks, Nikki. That's very nice of you to say. Thank you. Yeah, the rewatching is so important. I have been thinking lately, and this is going to require more discipline from me and more being methodical from me. So I don't know if I'm going to do it yet, but I've thought about doing a bi-monthly or like twice a month forecast, like doing 2 weeks at a time instead of 4 weeks, just because I do go in like, so, I mean, I just go in everything. And I do like this longer form thing, but I almost wonder if it would be convenient. I don't know if anyone has any comments, if like that sounds more preferable, if it would be easier to digest, or I don't know, just better for some reason if I were to do this every 2 weeks, 2 week chunks at a time instead of every month. So I would be here more often. But I've been thinking about doing that lately. If you have a preference, like please let me know. Because yeah, I'm wondering. Yeah, we got to keep them drafts going, that's, and I save them too. I think maybe by the time I'm 80, it'll be a book or something. Yeah, the spicy things have to have someplace to go. I mean, I'm a very Marshall chart, so I got to deal with that. Not every chart is Marshall. Not everybody needs their own personal spicy diary, but we do. I like that. That's what I'm going to start calling it, is my spicy journal. Thanks, everybody. Great comments. Let's get back to the second half of the month. When we're looking at all these folks in Sag, then we got to remember it's all right though, because we got Venus looking over this saying, hey, what's a way to make this fun though? What's a way to make this approachable, receivable? You have all these really excellent, enthusiastic ideas. How can we best bring in other people, or how can you best, again, just like present whatever you're excited about, no matter how mundane or otherwise. So I really just love this, and I feel like it's just like so helpful that Venus is there. I think that's all I want to say about the Sagittarius people. Oh, at this point as well. Okay, this is, god dang it. So, okay. I had mentioned it's like, okay, Venus helps. This square with Saturn, even though it's really frustrating and I don't think it's going to feel very good, it's also going to help keep us on the rails a little bit, and hopefully not super reactive or anything. But another thing we have to be aware of is Mercury here squaring Neptune. And anytime I have Mercury in a hard angle, a square in opposition to Neptune, I pretty much throw in Mercury retrograde protocols. We are already in the Mercury retrograde shadow phase. So Mercury retrograde story is already kind of starting now. Mercury is going to station in December 13th. So we don't have to worry about that until then, but we're entering that storyline. Mercury is struggling to do Mercury in a place that it's not familiar with. So that's 2 things to think about. Now, the third thing to think about is Mercury is square Neptune. And this, again, great for making changes to the way we do art or our spiritual life, or exploring that kind of intersection. But when it comes to having facts correct, having understandings correct, that can kind of go here or there. So if we're feeling spicy about something or angry or having any of those feelings that are hard to contain, and there's a question of accuracy in what we're understanding, because we can make stories up. We do it all the time with ourselves. Maybe I'm just telling them myself, but I do it. We just have to make sure that we know that those are stories and maybe they're not real, or maybe some of it's real and we need more facts. But yeah, it's not a good time to be like accusing people of things, or like if someone accuses you of something, just table the conversation for a couple days, maybe. By November 27th, Mercury is going to be separating from Neptune, so that will help. But yeah, just be extra careful during this last week of November. Be extra careful about information, communication, over communicate. If you think someone understands or think someone knows where to meet you or what time, they probably don't. Just double check, make sure they know, make sure you know, leave early for things, keep things, open-ended. Those are my Mercury retrograde protocols. They work really well when Mercury is also talking to Neptune. When I think about a square between these two places, it's almost like adjusting our story or adjusting the meaning of things due to new understanding or information. So it could be the other side of that too. Oh, I got new information and now I understand this. It could be intuitive information with Neptune here. So all kinds of information, but just make sure it's like on point. That's what I have to say about that. On the 25th, when we're having this Mercury Neptune square kind of separating, we are having the Mars Saturn square as well. The last square was August of 2022. The opposition between Mars and Saturn was July of 2023. And now we're having a square again at the end of November 2023. So if we want to look at this Mars Saturn square, back when Mars was in Virgo, that was in July. If we want to think back to what we were doing in July, that was that really grindy period. That's where I was moving into a new house and I was trying to figure out where everything went in the kitchen and it just was going nowhere. Like I was trying to do a bunch of little things in my life. I was trying to just do a bunch of writing and like nothing was getting done. It was very, very difficult. But at the same time, like I was also pretty focused and methodical and disciplined about things and really doing my best. But it was pretty grindy. Now we're getting the closing square of this. So if you can think back to like maybe something that you put in a lot of effort toward or really grinded through in August of 2022. So, it's kind of creating a bit of a story. When was the conjunction? I guess I failed to even look at that. Hold up. Yeah, that was April. It all began the last time we had Mars and Saturn together. That was April of 2022. Then the first square in August. Then another one in July. And now again. So yeah, a little homework assignment there too. Look in your journals and diaries and see what was going on. Okay. So yeah, again, those Mercury dates as well. So on the 25th, and Mars square Saturn, I should say as well. Frustration, adjustment. Mars is trying to do something in the Sag part of your chart. And Saturn is like, but there are some restrictions to this. There are some rules, some boundaries, borders, edges to this that we have to observe or honor. And you can't just get around them. We got to figure out how to deal with them. And with a square, there's some kind of change that needs to be made. There's some tension that needs to be dealt with, a problem to be solved. Yeah, for me in my 11th and 2nd, it's 100% going to be, I want to do a billion things. There's only so many resources I have. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many I have limitations to my resources. It doesn't matter how much I want to do with friends or how much I want to do in my work. I can only do so much. So I think that's going to be my square and kind of adjusting. So look to the areas of your chart and see how they're going. Jupiter can at least see one of these things. So, there's some help. Last little chunk. So Gemini full moon. I think at this point, we're getting out of the mind your own business territory. So I would say like the 24th of November, 25th, and 26th. These are mind your own business days. If people are weird. If everyone's fine, that's great. Don't worry about what I'm saying. If people are being like spicy, or you're feeling spicy, or things are frustrating, just like take care of yourself. Let other people be, and then table it. Come back to them on the 27th. So let's look at this full moon. That's it. That's the sauce. Now this piece of weather, this was kind of like what the weather was like last, it was like the Thanksgiving holiday of 2022. We had this kind of recipe for potential shenanigans at the dinner table. Again, exercise caution. This is like Uncle Ted is very convicted about what he's saying, like very zealotry potentially at worst. At best, this is like just someone who is enthusiastic and hell-bent on going for something. At worst, it is just someone who really believes in something and is a belligerent person about it, potentially. When we have a Gemini planet, then that's the debater, the question asker, the skeptic, the oh, well, what about this piece of information and this piece of information? Kind of arguing maybe against all of these Sagittarius planets. So that doubt and faith axes here. So we can see the potential for like intellectual discussion gone spicy. So choose the discussions that you want wisely. If you feel like they're getting heated, they are. Step back, do not engage, because this is the animal that we're working with. What else do I need to say about this? Oh, I mean, I guess what I'm thinking about now is that, even though Mars is here and adding kind of that potential for sharpness, they are invisible. So they have been, and now they are in a more externalizing kind of place that's fire and day, but also we can't see Mars in the night sky. And so there could be something here that is a bit hidden or a bit internalized or something of that nature. So that spiciness might go inward. So, watch that too. Sometimes when that we kind of push that down into ourselves, that hurts us. So we have to have some kind of outlet for any kind of excitement or energy. It might not even be like these irritating types of notes. It might just be like a lot of excitement, a lot of energy. And it's like, yeah, we need to go for a walk. We need to go for a post-dinner walk. That's the vibe at the end of November. Don't forget about walkies. What else about this moon? So we've got the ruler of said full moon. It can see it. Mercury is over in Sagittarius. So, that's great, but they are in the opposite place of being able to be of assistance to the moon in any kind of way. So I don't know how helpful, Mercury is going to be. And like, if there are big feelings or big events, like Mercury isn't in its strongest place to be able to rationalize through that. It more just wants to quickly act on things and just keep doing things. So I guess, again, just pick your battles if any come up. If your energy is getting scattered, notice that. This is also last thing, holiday season, depending on what you're doing, like, and this is the day before, like, honestly, any of these days with like Mars, so like the 24th, 25th, 26th, any of these days at the end of November, this is like mom is in the kitchen and everyone's in the kitchen and she yells at everyone to get out of the kitchen. Like, that's this energy. There's like too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too many people trying to insert their whatevers. And yeah, it's just overwhelming. So if you feel overwhelmed, if other people feel overwhelmed, just, do what you need to do to feel less whelmed. Very too many cooks in the kitchen. Yeah, mind your own business energy. So Mercury square Neptune, one more thing on that note. So by, the 26th, 27th, 28th, it's waning. This is actually going to be a 3-part thing though. So Mercury is going to eventually station retrograde. It's going to move over this again, and then a third time once it stations direct after the 13th of December. So when I'm looking at Mercury square Neptune, this is actually a 3-part story. So November 27th, then December 27th, so a month later, and then January 8th. And I don't know, to be honest, what this is going to be about. So this is more on like our let's just watch this and see. This will be our little homework assignment. So the first one, November 27th. Oops. Here. And again, this is about, confusion, lack of data, lack of understanding, but not realizing it. Or it could be a big shift or change of the way that we maybe do our spiritual or artistic practices, some kind of little detail-oriented shift in how we do those things. So it could be constructive, but it is a little tense. And then that happens again on December 27th. And that'll be after it is stationed retrograde. You can see that there. And then the final one, January 8th. And that'll be once it's stationed direct. So, I don't know. I guess look at the Sag, Pisces places of your chart. If there are anything that feels unclear, dicey, unsteady, and it's like, I don't know if this is a good idea. I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try this thing. Maybe it's going to work. Maybe it's not. It could be like, maybe I'm going to change my communication style or the way that I do this thing. I don't know. It's Mercury, but it's a longer story. So give yourself until January to see that work out, or see understanding come in, or the adjustments fruit something. At this time as well, Venus is applying to the south node. So this is always interesting to me when a planet transits over a south node. This is a point of lessening. So what is lessening here potentially? Venus in Libra, this could be a letting go of or a lessening of diplomacy, of self-censorship, of potentially those too much Venus things, people pleasing, trying too hard to keep the peace or to keep something stable or harmonious. Letting go of any of that is deleterious to ourselves. The South Node is also a point that is about what is immaterial, spiritual. It is not of the material world. It's not oriented toward the material world. It is oriented toward what is going away from it. And that is more in line with what is spiritual or metaphysical. So this could be actually Venus and Libra, but in a more metaphysical, spiritual type way. So maybe our diplomacy and our ethics is thought about on a spiritual level in like a huge cosmic way of some kind. Maybe we are reflecting on the 27th, probably before this too, 25th, 26th, 27th. Maybe we're reflecting amongst all these other things going on, all this potential for spice. Venus is like having some spiritual insights about relationship, about relating. Maybe with all of this other spiciness and challenge going on or tension, we are like, yeah, actually, I don't give any Fs today, and I'm just going to say what I want. So, we'll have to see if that's what happens. It could be a temporary putting down of something It could be a temporary setting down of a relationship. Like, I'm not going to talk to this person for a few days. It could be a temporary disappearance of a relationship, or some kind of woman in your life. If we're looking at that kind of this gendered symbolism of Venus potentially being women in our lives, it might just be like, oh yeah, I don't hear from that person for a few days. Hopefully over nothing. Hopefully it just is a random happenstance that you don't hear from them or see them, but it could be because of something else. When I think of Venus being pleasure, beauty, especially here, like more like the composition and the layout of everything. When I think about that in a spiritual context, I'm thinking about like, how is my altar set up? How are some of my spiritual practices set up here? And are they enjoyable? Do I actually enjoy them? Do they bring me pleasure? Do they bring me, and it's okay. Like all of our spiritual stuff doesn't have to be fuddy-duddy and not feel good. Like I can have the nice incense. I can like, feel the joy of love when I'm meditating or whatever. It's being spiritual or whatever is not about being serious or like, having no emotion or something or being stoic. I do think we can work in, happy feelings and love and pleasure into our spiritual practices. So it could be very much about that. But I don't think we're going to have a ton of vitality for peopling on these days. So we'll have to see how that affects us and our ability to kind of weather the rest of the sky. But if you feel like you need a break from peopling, particularly if you just did a bunch of holidays, like give yourself a break from peopling. That would be a very appropriate thing to do with Venus and South Node here. So that's what I have to say about that. And I mean, also, okay, so Venus rules another part of our chart. So we could also be Venus with South Node letting go of things that relate to the Taurus area of our chart. So think about the house topics that are with Taurus and what might be let go, set down, temporarily gone, disappearing, whatever. It might have to do with that as well. So then the last, and that is perfected on the 29th, it looks like here. So then after, that last week, we'll get Venus past the South Node. And then I think, was that really the last thing I wanted to talk about? Nope, it wasn't. Moon's square between Pluto and Venus. Oh yeah, this was worth talking about. So the month of November ends with the moon coming into a little T square with Pluto and Venus, which I found really interesting. Let's see. It's probably more on the 1st of December, to be honest, but we'll talk about it anyway. So this is cardinal. Could be about how we initiate things that have already been initiated. And then we're dealing with Venus in Capricorn or Libra in Capricorn, Venus and Pluto. This just feels a lot like relationships, resources, and distribution of them. Power dynamics, very easily coming into situations where our relationships and our resources are all intertwined and entangled. And the moon in Cancer really focusing on what is needed for everyone to feel safe, cared for, nourished, like they can grow. So, part of the moon in Cancer, it's about what do I need? What are my needs? Are they being met? And do I feel safe enough to grow? So those are very common Cancer things. That's a question that's happening with the moon here. Venus is thinking about the structure of relationship. She's thinking about decorum. This is a place where Saturn has its exaltation. So it is about the rules and about the commitments and the responsibilities and the duties and obligations that we have in relationship. And then Pluto is trying to maintain this thing that is potentially, we feel like it's too big to fail. We feel like it is something where we could even be strong-armed or feel out of our empowerment. So, there's questions of care, nourishment, relationship structure, but also, do I feel empowered or not, and what needs to change in order for me to feel that way. So I think a lot of times Pluto comes up and we notice it in the ways that we feel disempowered, or like something is just so hard to budge in our lives or so hard to change. I think other times we are the one that holds the power, and we don't really understand that all the time, and we take that for granted. So even looking in at that, and what are the places where I do have a lot of power, and how do I help distribute that, or how do I help that be healthy, when I have that, how do I wield that in a way that's fair and ethical? This is a great time to, if there's tension around things, I think it would, redistribution of wealth in more of a community sense. This would be a great time for that. If we're all feeling a bit tense about how things are going on in the world, maybe give to a charity at the end of the month. That might be a nice way to try to leverage some of this tense energy here, or leverage your power in some kind of helpful way for others. That could be a nice thing to do here with whatever's tense, because Venus is the kind of release point, and she's really powerful. So whatever is going on here at the end of the month, Venus is very able to navigate it in a way that everybody can win with that. All right. That's the month. That's what I have. Let me see what folks are saying. Oh, I have I've been told that I'm supposed to speak up for myself, and I am going to speak up for myself and say I have super stickers. They let you tip me now. No pressure at all. But if you would like to tip me, there is a little like money button. I believe it's below the chat. Feel free to do that at any time, now, in the future, explore it for later. But that helps me exist, pay my rent, eat, live, keep doing this job, all those things. Yeah. So it's a new chapter in my own life. I've never been able to do this before, to make money, like presenting myself out in public with astrology. I've done that in other ways with my physical form, but not with my brain. So if you would like to support me monetarily for my brain stuff, I would very much appreciate that. Thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all of your beautiful comments and sharing things. I know that month was rough. Let's see. Yeah, the nasty journal, the spicy journal. Yeah, Sensi, don't let anyone find your spicy journal. Jendi is in favor of twice a month. Yeah, and like, I think I love listening to the long form things, but if it's kind of out of sight, it's out of mind for me personally, so I can understand why other people are like that. Yeah, I mean, totally. So I'm gonna really seriously think about that. Sam brings up a good point. Is it arguing or is it questioning? Well, that depends on your tone, probably. Yeah. All right, everybody. Great job. We did it. We came together. Virtual Astrology Club. We had a club about astrology. We talked about November. I guess closing thoughts. Do I have any? Not really. I can't think of any right now, but I would say there's a lot of logistical strength at the beginning of the month. So first, third, the first 10 days, material world stuff, get yourself into a good position as best you can. We have the last week gets a little weird. Yeah, the last week of November gets a little weird. So be patient. Check your facts, check your details. If we do miss details, it is probably going to be because we're going too fast, and because we are under communicating, or because we are getting scattered, because mutable energy is scattered. It is about changeability. Things are more fixed in the beginning of the month. At the end of the month, they get more mutable. So there is more change rapidly, more and more and more as the month goes on. There's more and more change. Oh, I do remember. I'm going to go on my little spiritual rant here for a second. Thank you, Jendi. That is so kind. I really appreciate that. Definitely gonna eat food now with that money. I love you. Thank you. So this is okay. If you're into astrology and you're not so much into Buddhist things, this is your time to say adios if you would like. You do not have to stick around for this. You can stop listening. That's totally fine. This is all opinion, 100% opinion, but I'm going to actually stop my share. How do I do that? Share. There, here I am. Okay. So I've been noticing on social media that there's like, and this happens anytime the world blows up, which is sadly all the time now. But anytime something really serious happens, like everyone has to make a statement, everyone has to say their piece about it online. And that's, there's a lot of sense of urgency to do that. An eclipse season that we just had, and it was in this deeply feeling Scorpio, and we've had like Virgo and Libra stuff happening. Like our sensitivity and awareness to what is wrong, our sensitivity and awareness to injustice is just really ramped up right now. Our sense of what is a threat is really ramped up right now in Scorpio. I have a Scorpio Mars. I understand how they work. Like we are great at threat assessment, almost too good sometimes. It's not always a threat level orange. It's not always a threat level red. And we don't, just because it's strong doesn't mean it's always correct. We do need the whole chart, the whole village to raise this baby. But anyway, there's just a lot of pressure right now and sense of urgency, I think, for everyone to have an opinion, for everyone to say a thing about a thing. And I was just hearing other astrologers recently just be really pressuring to the community and to other people about silence. This always comes up like, oh, people who aren't saying anything or people who are silent, they must not be doing work. They must not be engaging or caring about it. And, how dare you be an astrologer or have astrology and not be talking about this thing? And I get that because there is this urgency, and there is urgency. So I don't want to dismiss it. Like, yeah, things have been bad for a really long time, and they continue to be very bad in a lot of ways. But I do not think that is the most skillful way to go about it. And I think we all saw that in June of 2021? Was it that long ago now? It feels like it was yesterday. And we were all mass hysterical. And a lot of us were saying things that were out of our lane. Like, so clearly I'm talking about like the Mideast conflicts. I'm a white lady from Wisconsin. I don't know if anyone's noticed this. I don't know shit. So you will not be hearing me say anything about it. And it doesn't mean I don't care. And it doesn't mean that, I'm not politically minded. I think everything is in politics. I don't think anything is not political. Like people who think yoga should not be political or astrology should not be political. I don't agree with that. Everything is political, but it's reactive. This is that's the main thing, is like everyone is pushing right now, and the response is for us to be reactive. And that is never helpful. I don't know when that is helpful outside of an emergency. And I'm not on fire and you're not on fire. If you're watching this, you're probably not. So don't let anyone pressure you into saying stuff or feeling like you have to say stuff or make a statement. And we have to look at our motivations. Like, why do I feel the need to have to say a thing about this? Is it because I need other people to know that I'm thinking about it because they're going to think a thing that I don't want them to think about me, or that's not a good motivation, right? So I just wanted to bring that up because it's just like absolutely wild and just deeply unskillful to expect having a blanket expectation that everyone with a mic should be saying things. It's like, no, actually, I would probably say a lot of dumb things. So that's why I brought in some of the links below that I did, particularly the one from Jacoby Ballard on anger and sustainability in activism in these ways that we're trying to go about things. So from my Buddhist lens, because of course that's where this is coming from, we look at the two ways of changing things internally and externally. We do our internal work and the external work. Sometimes some of us are doing internal work. Sometimes some of us are making moves in private, and some of us are doing more external work on the systems. They both need to happen, but they're not all going to be happening at the same time. And to expect ourselves and each other to be constantly just going, that's how we all burn ourselves out on these things. So, we need to play the long game, and getting really, really intense online, it doesn't change anything. It's not. I'm sorry. Like, that's my opinion. I can be mad online all day and intense and squawking about it, and it doesn't change anything. Money changes stuff. Give money to places. Hell, maybe, I should say that, donate to stuff. Stop giving me money, to give them money. But like, that's a good way to help. But being loud online is not, that's not the move. Yeah. So I also get this from, now this is, I got my little cheat sheet, but I linked to this below as well. And I do want to say, like, there's a difference between a small teacher and a big teacher. Ajahn Chah, who is a teacher in Book and Spirit of Mine, he has a book called Food for the Heart, and he talks about small teachers and big teachers. And small teachers are like ones that are, you can say stuff all day long, but if you're not walking the walk, if you're not practicing it, you're not truly a teacher. I'm a small teacher. Definitely sometimes I feel like one. But we want to be a big teacher where we are walking our walk. If we're spouting off online about shadow work, you better be doing it. I would say on the note, and I'm bringing this up because on the note of communication, especially lately, I have been feeling like a very small teacher because I know a lot of these things and I have been falling short a lot lately. So I'm coming at this from that place of humility. At the same time, I am trying, and I think this is all aspirational. So what I'm about to say and read is all aspirational. I don't expect myself or anyone to be like this all the time. And it's, that's why we have spiritual practices. But this is, what is, I'm going to say it all wrong, but it's the bottom link, and it is the Katavata Sutta. It is 3.67. And it is about topics of discussion. And it's this whole long thing. Well, it's not that long. It's probably like a 5-minute read. It's this whole thing about it's like a rubric for knowing when you are ready to have a discussion. It's about the appropriate procedure when someone it says competent to hold a discussion. And about a year ago, I came upon this. It was talked about in my group meditation, or my meditation group. And I wrote down a lot of the cliff notes on a piece of paper, and I've been trying to do them for a year. And this is also part of the reason that my Twitter drafts are lit and nothing else is, because I go through this list of things before I share. Not all the time. Sometimes I forget. But if I do go through this list before I share, 9 times out of 10, I'm not sharing. It's just like I'm not meeting the criteria. So I'm going to actually share my screen here. This is what I was trying to read before. If anyone else can read that word, I can't. But it's in my heart. I'm trying. I'm just going to read this. So it's going to be a little dry, but here we go. You can know whether or not a person has what's required by seeing how they take part in discussion. If they actively listen, they have what is required to have a discussion skillfully. If they don't actively listen, they don't have what's required. Someone who has what's required directly knows one thing, completely understands one thing, gives up one thing, and realizes one thing. And then they experience complete freedom. This is the purpose of discussion, consultation, the requirements, and listening well, the liberation of the mind by not grasping. So then here's that was the setup. Now here is the part with this, basically a rubric. So when we're going into discussion with someone And I'm thinking in the case of just like posting on the internet about anything. This is ideal, aspirational. So those who converse with hostility, too sure of themselves, arrogant, ignoble, attacking virtues, they look for flaws in each other. They rejoice together when their opponent speaks poorly and makes a mistake, becoming confused and defeated. But the noble ones don't discuss like this. If an astute person wants to hold a discussion connected with the teachings and its meaning, the kind of discussion the noble ones hold, then that wise one should start the discussion, knowing when the time is right, neither hostile nor arrogant, not overexcited. That's a hard one for me. That I circled that one. I'm always overexcited. Contemptuous or aggressive. 8 out of 10 tweets that I used to have were contemptuous and they ended up in the drafts. Hot takes, every single one of them contemptuous usually. So knowing when the time is right, neither hostile nor arrogant, not overexcited, not contemptuous or aggressive, or with a mind full of jealousy. They'd speak from what they rightly know. They agree with what is well spoken without criticizing what was poorly said. They'd not persist in finding faults, nor seize on trivial mistakes, neither intimidating nor crushing the other, nor would they speak suggestively. Good people consult for the sake of knowledge and clarity. That's the one. Good people consult for the sake of knowledge and clarity. Is it for knowledge? Is it for clarity? Or are we saying it because we feel pressured by some external person who thinks we should be saying stuff? So that's the big thing here. Am I speaking right now, and why? That is how the noble ones consult. That is noble consultation. Knowing this, an intelligent person would consult without arrogance. So, man, that's a lot of stuff. Another way that this comes out is the whole THINK acronym. Is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, or kind? Most of mine's unnecessary, which is why I usually don't say stuff. Is this the right audience? You know, sometimes I think about that. So yeah, all of that. There's just so many things that we can think about before we fire off whatever. And I don't know, I just wanted to share that because I've seen, and this is not about any one person. I have been seeing for the last month a lot of pressure for everyone to be like, people poking at other people to say stuff. And it's like, let people just do their own stuff. Let people just be. And, you know, they might be doing their internal work. They might be doing something else that is silent and does not require their voice. Our voice is one way to engage with the world. There are many other ways. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to go there. Let me see if anyone is still here saying anything. I don't think so. I think I've lost y'all, but that's great. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Reverend Kai. Thank you, Sam. I appreciate you. It is all very aspirational. And this is why I started in with the small teacher versus large teacher, because I don't want to come in here pretending like I'm a large teacher on any of this at all. Very, 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 very difficult. So yeah, I say all that with love, just so that we all can come at the current piece of time, which is very difficult, in a way that is responsive and not reactive. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Sparkles of Gold. Thank you very much. Good to see you here. That's all I have on that very, like very, I guess, sober note. Gal. Yeah, I don't have anything to lighten that up. No palate cleansers. Everyone go look at cute baby animals online now, please. Let's get this serotonin up. Have a good month, everyone. I wish you all the best. Send me an email, comment below if you got any questions, if you need any clarification on anything that I have said. And yeah, I just wish everyone the best November ever. No, I'm not into numerology. I don't know anything about it, Sam. But I'm glad some of that resonated, hopefully, with whatever life path you are. I think I'm a 9. You probably know more about that than I do, though. But anyway, it was good to meet you. And thank you, Sam, for joining us. It's always nice to see some new faces as well. All right. Take care, everybody.